Welcome back, Autobots and Decepticons, to another episode of Fixing Transformers. And in today's we're going to take a look at what happened to Scalpel during and after Revenge of the Fallen. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So for you guys who do not remember who Scalpel was, here's a quick recap on him. Scalpel, better known as a doctor, was a medic of the Decepticons, and is one of Soundwave's many minions. During Revenge of the Fallen, Scalpel was transported to the Bayos Freightliner by Ravage, and would rendezvous with the other 4 Constructicons that were on the Bayos. Once the Decepticons were above the Laurentian Abyss, they dismounted the ship to find Megatron's body. Once they reached the sea floor, Scalpel was released to assess the extent of the damage that was done to Megatron. After a core examination, Scalpel concluded that they would need some spare parts, and ordered the death of the smallest Constructicon. Once he had the donated parts, he slammed the Allspark shard into Megatron's chest, causing scrap metal's parts to combine onto Megatron, reviving Megs and giving him a brand new upgraded body. Later, inside of an abandoned factory, Scalpel was ordered to examine Sam Witwicky, in the hopes of finding out what he had learned from the Allspark's information that was downloaded into his brain. After using some extremely evasive techniques, Scalpel deduced that Sam's mind was definitely full of handy-dandy information, and the best way to get that info was to extract Sam's brain. But before he could start his procedure, his attempt was interrupted by the arrival of Optimus Prime and Bumblebee. And after that, he's never seen again up until Dark of the Moon, where there are many clones of him helping rebuild Megatron. And we don't even know if Scalpel is among them. Well, to sort this all out, let's start from the beginning, when Megatron gets revived. Scalpel and the gang are still at the bottom of the Laurentian Abyss after Megatron is revived. And for Scalpel to be at the abandoned factory, he has to travel all the way to New Jersey. Now, the reason it's New Jersey is because Princeton University is located there. Now, if you remember, Princeton Uni is Sam's college, and it's in the same town as the abandoned factory. So now we need to figure out, how does Scalpel get to the factory? Well, if you remember, Scalpel isn't the only Decepticon who has to be at the factory. Grinder also has to be there too, since he needs to bring Sam and the gang for interrogation. And if you kept up with my Bonecrusher, Blackout, and Brawl theory, you'll know that the shard did not only revive Megatron, it also revived Bonecrusher, Blackout, and Brawl. So I theorized while the Constructicons ravaged Bonecrusher and Brawl made their way to New York, Scalpel hitched a ride on Grinder, and once Grinder made his way out of the water using his propeller blades, he would go to a nearby aircraft carrier, which was monitoring the Laurentian Abyss, and scan a Sikorsky CH-53E Super Stalin to accommodate his new size, and then he would fly over to New Jersey and into the abandoned factory to wait for Megatron's further orders. Now, fun fact, during the time between Megatron talking to the Fallen and when Sam gets captured, Scalpel has no alternate mode, so when he was waiting in the factory, he would decide to scan an American Optical Lens Meter Junior Model 603 from 1938, and this device was used to check out the various aspects of a prescription lens for glasses. But now let's jump ahead to when Scalpel is about to extract Sam's brain, and this is the last scene I would ever see of Scalpel until Dark of the Moon. But now the question is, what happened to him? Well, I believe as soon as Optimus Prime came, it caused Megatron to lose his grip on Sam, and for Scalpel to be stunned by confusion on how Prime found her location. This gave enough time for Sam to punch Scalpel off of him and to book it out of there, while the Autobots and Decepticons duked it out. Knowing that he was no match for the Autobots, Scalpel hid somewhere safe in the factory to make sure he wouldn't get caught in the crossfire. Later, after Prime's death, Scalpel would send out a distress message requesting for anyone to pick him up. This message would be intercepted by Ravage, where he would inject him back into his chest, and make his way over to Egypt with the other Decepticons. But fast forwarding to Ravage's death, as we all know, he was killed by B by getting his spine ripped out. But I theorize that Scalpel was still inside when this happened. Now, the reason why we don't see him is because he was still in the main compartment, which is seen right here, and that main compartment is surprisingly intact, but the front doors of it were taken off due to the way Ravage was killed. But the reason why Scalpel didn't die when he hit the wall was because Ravage's corpse served as a makeshift shield, absorbing the impact and keeping Scalpel safe. Now, I believe Scalpel would wait inside Ravage's corpse until Bumblebee would leave so he wouldn't be spotted, and once the coast was clear, he would use a saw blade to get his way out, and once he was out, he would look at the horde that bestowed in front of him. Rampage with no arms, and Ravage is a pile of scrap parts, but nevertheless he knew he had to get out of there. I theorized that he would hide in a nearby structure to stay safe from all the gunfire. But now we need to figure out, how did he survive the airstrike? And while thanks to context clues that were in the film, this answer is very easy. Before the bombs drop, we can see that there's 3 things in the background. Town A, where the airstrike is gonna hit, Town B, which is the other town in the background, and the pyramid where the Fallen and Megatron are standing at. Now at this moment in time, Scalpel is in Town B, and here is why. When Sam left the Tomb of the Primes to get the Matrix to Optimus, he entered Town B. This is the town where we saw the Decepticons trying to find Sam, Ravage included. Now keep in mind that there are no military personnel here, since they're at Town A protecting Optimus' body while fighting off the Decepticon protoforms. This is further proven by the fact that when we see Sam and Kayla running, they see Town A, and Sam says we have to help them.
We got a half mile. I don't think the soldiers know we're here.
Now after this shot, it cuts to the military fighting off the Decepticons, and then to Devastator, but when we see Sam again, he is still running around in Town B, proving by the fact that Starscream, who was in the area previously, spotted Sam, and gives us a location to Rampage so he can engage. Now this is where we come full circle, since this is the area where Ravage dies and Scalpel is stranded, proving that Scalpel would not be blown up by the airstrike, since the strike only destroyed Town A and not Town B. And if you're wondering how Sam got to Town A, after convincing his parents to go for Bumblebee to get the safety, it yet again cuts to the military fighting off the Decepticons, and then to Devastator. But when it goes back to Sam, he's in Town A, proven by the fact that we can see military personnel along with some Autobots. So during the time the military fought off the Decepticons, and Devastator climbing up the pyramid, it gave Sam and Michaela enough time to make their way from Town B to Town A. So I hope with all that complex stuff out of the way, it helps us conclude that Scalpel survived the Operation Firestorm airstrike, but now we need to ask ourselves what happened to him after. And I believe that Scalpel would stay hidden until the battle was over, and once the military and Autobots left, Scalpel would make his way around the battlefield, searching for any survivors. Now I theorize that Scalpel would come across the Long Haul clone, and he would see that it was barely holding on to life. So Scalpel did what he could to keep the drone online. Knowing that most of the body was damaged, he decided to give it a new one, by just using the clone's head, spark, and some spare parts from the clone's body, deeming this creature to be Igor. And in my next video, I'll go into more detail on the transition from clone to Igor, so stay tuned for that. But after the procedure was done, Scalpel and Igor were found by Megatron, Starscream, and Soundwave under hunt for survivors. Now what I'm about to say next will explain how there were multiple Scalpel units in Dark of the Moon. So Scalpel, realizing that Megatron was critically damaged, he started to tend to his wounds, putting the pieces back together from the inside out. Noticing that this would take a long time, Scalpel asked Soundwave to eject some of his assistants to help out. And this is why we can see many Scalpel units fixing Megatron in Dark of the Moon. But now you may be saying, Trance, how could Soundwave have multiple Scalpel units? Well, the reason why I think there are multiple units of Scalpel is because, if you think about it, why would Decepticons only have one Scalpel? It would be very unreliable due to how small he is, and how long it would take for him to fix something. So I believe that Scalpel requested for himself to get cloned, and for those clones to be an extension of himself that he could control, so he could fix his fellow Decepticons much faster. And I have some evidence to back this up. In Dark of the Moon, when the Scalpel units are fixing Megs, only one of them stands out to be a main Scalpel, since he speaks English, and I'll compare his voice clips to when all the other Scalpel clones are talking.
Gaseous sycophant, the sycophant, the sycophant.
It's me to see you, so...
What news from your little does it serve their purpose, Soundwave? Delectre me, slave.
As we can see, there's a drastic difference between Scalpel's voice and the clones, but let's push it further and compare it to Scalpel's voice in Revenge of the Fallen.
We must have a brain on the evil!
See the sycophant, the sycophant, the sycophant.
Now to be honest, it's not an exact match, but I haven't played my accent card yet. Now what I mean here is, the time between the events of Revenge of the Fallen and Dark of the Moon is 3 years, since Dark of the Moon takes place in 2012, according to TF Wiki. Now 3 years is a long gap, meaning that over time when Scalpel had been working on Megatron, his German accent slightly converted to a more of an American one, since Meg, Starscream, Igor, and Soundwave all have American sounding accents. But in all fairness, it's the only line that Scalpel gets in Dark of the Moon, and it is him screaming ah after he gets smacked. So it's not an easy comparison to make, since it is a scream and not a normal speaking voice. So now with all the evidence that I've put down, I'm positive that the Scalpel that we see get smacked is a Scalpel from Revenge of the Fallen. Now next thing I would like to cover is how could Soundwave store that many Scalpel units? Well, if you remember, during Revenge of the Fallen, he stored Ravage, Laser, Beak, and the Microcons. And possibly he also stored Alice, Brains, and Wheelie at one point, but that's for another video. Now if you think about it, if he was able to store all that, then I'm positive he would have been able to store a few dozen Scalpel units. And this moves me into my next point. In Dark of the Moon, we see that there's around 5 Scalpel units tending to Megatron's wounds. Well, I believe there was originally a few dozen, and this can be proven by the fact that if you look at Megatron after the Revenge of the Fallen battle, he is terribly wounded, and it would take way more than 5 Scalpel units to fix him. But the reason why there are 5 in Dark of the Moon is because we saw Megatron kill 2 of them. One that he squished inside of his head, and the other he grabbed off his chest to squish. And TF Wiki says the reason why Megatron does this is out of boredom. But I think there's another reason, and that is when the Scalpels fix him, it can be quite painful. So I think when it gets too painful, he outright kills them, and this can be seen to the Scalpel that has his saw blade out. Another reason why I'd be irritation is because when we see him smack Scalpel, it was because Scalpel was crawling on his face. And think about it like you have a bug crawling on you, or a fly that's right in front of your face. You want to get it away from you because it's very irritating. But to fully hit home with this, when Megatron is talking to Carly, we can see that his eyes twitch when the Scalpels crawl over his face, proving that there is some type of irritation. Now the last thing I'd like to address is what happened to Scalpel and the Scalpel units. Well, the last time we ever saw them is when Megatron was talking to Carly. And later when Megatron goes to save Optimus, they're not seen again, since when we see when Megatron gets decapitated, none of the scalpels are on his head. And this is not the first time they just randomly disappeared. When Megatron was talking to Sentinel, they were gone, and when Megatron was in Washington DC, they were not seen either. So my best bet would be that they get stored somewhere in Megatron, possibly fixing some internal parts. And I believe that's what happened when Megatron was killed. The scalpels were stored somewhere in Megatron's body when Megatron bit the axe. And I theorize that they would eventually break out of Megatron's body to escape, but would easily be spotted by cleanup crews transporting Megatron's body to KSI. And since Megatron's body was such a high-profile target, there would definitely be some guards guarding the corpse so they wouldn't have a repeat of Revenge of the Fallen. And once they saw the Scalpel units break out, they would all be killed on the spot, closing Scalpel's story for the rest of the former Transformers cinematic universe. But before I go, let's talk about some fun facts about Scalpel. Scalpel is based off of a stereotypical crazy World War II German scientist. This is why he was given a German accent, the huge goggles, and why he was shown to torture Sam. Another fun fact is, when Megatron transforms into vehicle mode, the scalpels get stored somewhere inside of him. I like to think that they're either in the empty fuel tanker or in the driver's seat. The last fun fact that I'd like to point out is that in Dark of the Moon, when we see Megatron talking to Sentinel, no scalpels are present, but after Megs gets a chunk of his head ripped out, he has the scalpels all in the same area fixing the damage. And just like that was Scalpel's story within the former Transformers cinematic universe. If you enjoyed this theory in the Fixing Transformers collection, please give a like rating because it helped the channel a lot. And as always, it's been Trans Theories reminding you guys to never stop theorizing.